here we go. Your first test in human geography. A very, very intimidating point in your human geography life. Uh, you never know what to expect until after you've taken that first test. Well, I've already told you you've got 35 questions, multiple choice. You've got 4 questions to choose from that's going to be on that could appear, 2 of which could appear on your test as free response questions. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm giving you this long list of words on a study guide. You can see it right here in front of your face. The thing is, we don't know what to study. What does it mean, globalization? What does it mean, local diversity? What exactly do I need to know? Well, rest easy. I have the test in front of me. What I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be covering concepts that are going to appear on the test. And if I need to type something out, like maybe spelling or something like that, I might do that. I'll be able to show you guys maps and projections and things like that. So, what I would recommend you do is take notes while I'm going over the information, because this stuff is going to appear on the test. It's not a matter. It's not a matter of it will appear in the test in some shape or form. Okay, here we go. Let's talk. I'm going to ask you about map making. All right, I'm going to ask you what is map making. What is a word for that? So make sure that you guys know what. I'll tell you straight up. Cartography. Your book starts off on page 6 talking about early map making, and we need to know what cartography is, which is the art of making maps. So straight up, I'm going to ask you a question about that. Make sure you know what it is. Scale. There are several questions I'm going to ask you about scale, and if you look on the study guide, we're looking at written scale, graphic scale, and ratio and fraction scale. That's the same thing. Anytime you hear ratio or fraction, same exact kind of measurements. Okay. If you look on page 7 in your textbook, you're going to see where each of the 3 of these things are defined. There's a little paragraph off to the right about them, and we looked at this kind of in a PowerPoint as well. I'm going to ask you to be able to identify them in a question. So if I ask you 1 to 24,000 is an example of what kind of scale. All right, you need to be able to recognize that. You need to be able to recognize what a written scale may look like, and so on and so forth. Okay, if you, okay, yeah, just make sure you guys can identify that. Scale itself, I want you to know the definition of scale itself. And if you look in the back of this book is pretty cool for several things. The books that they used last year, the old versions before we got these new ones, they don't have the words defined in the back of the book or in the back of each chapter like this one does. But if you look in the back, vocabulary is a huge part of the test. This section here is going to save your life. We're on page 42. If you look at where it says scale, the relationship between the portion of Earth being studied and the Earth as a whole. Okay, so what I'm going to want you guys to be able to tell me is the relationship between the length of an object on a map and that same feature on the actual landscape. That's what scale is. That's what scale is attempting to do. I also want you to be able to tell me about small scale versus large scale. Small scale versus large scale. If you're looking at a large scale map, you're looking at great detail. Great detail. Large scale is going to show a small area, but you're going to see tons of detail on it, like a map of a city or a map of a block. A large scale map is going to show you a large area, or a big area, but a very small amount of details. So small scale maps would be like the world as a whole, okay, or the United States, for example. So if I'm asking you a question to tell me which map would have the smallest scale, the bigger the area in the map, the smaller the scale on the map, okay? Pretty simple if you can just simply remember that and not get it mixed up. I know that's basically the key to everything, isn't it? Don't get it mixed up. That's why I'm a genius. A system of transferring a map. You're taking the spherical shape of the world and turning it into a map, like a flat map. This is called a projection. And you guys did an assignment, the map assignment, that just shows projections. All right, and just to take a few quick looks at map projections. Sometimes, like if you look at this one right here, it actually is showing you. I don't know if this is going to be worth anything, but the map is actually showing you how the projection is made. All right, take a look for a second. If you have a, it's not going to get bigger, is it? Okay, well anyway, if you take a round circle or sphere like the Earth, and you're trying to make these different flat projections, look what you have to do. You have a flat map, you're trying to show the North Pole. You have to actually flatten it out so that in the center around the pole it's going to be really accurate. But as you get further out, there's going to be something we like to call distortion. All right, in other words, it's not going to tell you the truth. It's going to be slightly off skew. It's going to be a skew. Okay? This is a conic projection. This is the kind of projection you're going to see that shows stuff like Europe and North America. And those areas in Europe and North America are going to be very accurate towards the center of the flat map. But once you start getting off on the side, it's going to be pretty inaccurate. Let me show you what I mean on this. Just real quick, because I don't want to take too much time. North America knows what I'm talking about. We're going to do image search. Let's see if I can't find a quick map that shows. I shouldn't have done North America. I should have done the United States. Actually, let's do this. Let's look up Eurasia. This is going to be a conic projection. How do I know that? Well, look at the lines of latitude. They're kind of a rounded shape here, going all the way down. Your longitude points seem to go up, like they're going to intersect at some point if you kept going. The idea here is you want to capture the curved surface of the Earth, and this projection does a pretty good job. Where is it most accurate? The center. Where is it least accurate? The very, very tops and bottoms. Okay, it's going to be least accurate there. The most accurate towards the center, because that's what the projection is trying to show. And based on what we were just now looking at, the further down you get, the more distorted, and the further up you get, the more everything's going to look like it's squished in there. This would be what a Mercator map is going to look like. If you flatten out the whole entire world, you get a map that looks like the longitude lines are parallel where they're not. They're not at all. Right? And you guys, again, you've already seen this. I mean, I'm not going to be offended if you fast forward, a little bit while I'm showing you all this stuff. You should already know from doing the map assignment. But there you go. So that's how map projection works. Okay, now that I've told you to go ahead and fast forward, I'm going to move on to the next topic here. So we're talking about this. We've already told you we've talked about what distortion is. I do want you to know that the more you're going to see more distortion on small scale maps. The smaller the scale, the more odds there are for distortion. Alright, the least amount of distortion you're going to see is going to be on a globe. Okay, again, back at the first page where it says early map making, you've got people like, page 6 I'm in your textbook. You've got Aristotle, Eratosthenes, these people we talked about, Ptolemy. We talked about these guys a little bit on the first few days of school when we were looking at the very beginning of my PowerPoint. The only thing I want you to know about these individuals in particular is Eratosthenes was the first dude to figure out the word geography. He used geography and studied geography as a discipline, and he also was able to successfully label, or I guess come really close to telling the circumference of the Earth. He was a very smart guy. I have no idea how he did it. I can't do circumference with a daggum calculator, let alone stand outside and set up shadows and measurements based on what time of the day or month it might be, or year. This guy was a genius in my book. So I'm going to ask you, let's look at other terms I want you to know. Toponym. Toponym, what in the world is that? It's a place name, simply put. If you look on a map and you're going to see something like, let's see if I can find you the world's largest toponym. This is in page 14 in your book. Bam. There we go. And that's, the picture doesn't even show the whole place. Isn't that ridiculous? Um, and it kind of disappeared on me just then. But let's go back to. Come on, computer. What are we doing? Well, it's totally Oh man. Well, anyway, look on page 14. I can't pronounce it. It's some kind of an Icelandic name, and nobody can pronounce Icelandic names. If you go on YouTube, I would do it, but it'd take me too long. My computer's going too slow. But you were able to actually hear somebody from Iceland. I believe it's Icelandish. They say it's Welsh. Anyway, you can hear someone actually try to pronounce this. It sounds like a whole mouthful. It's pretty crazy. The word means the Church of Mary in the hollow of the White Hazel near the fierce whirlpool, and the Church of Tysilio by the Red Cave. That's quite an impressive place. Okay, the name or the place, the word given to a place name is a toponym. That's why I want y'all to take it out of that. You just know what a toponym is. You will see it. I'm going to also ask you to identify what the word situation is. Relative location, basically. If you look on page 14, you're going to see situation, and it's talking about where something is in relation to other things. That's relative location. A good way to look at situation is, I think that the best example comes straight out of the, straight out of the PowerPoint that we looked at earlier. Let's see. I'll pull it up real quick. The Dogtails PowerPoint. If I pull up Dogtails, that computer is just about too slow for me right there. Pull up Dogtails and I look at situation, the very last S. Look at this map of Hawaii. It's going to show what Hawaii is. Are you kidding me? Oh, okay. It's going to show what Hawaii is right here, or no, I guess right here in the big map. It's going to show little islands, but then here it's going to show you where it is in relation to the rest of the United States. This is a situation or a relative location of Hawaii. Be careful not to identify it or mix it up with site. Site doesn't even have to do with location. If you're looking at the 5 themes, site describes the place. Site is the same as what geographers study when they look at place. Characteristics of a location. Okay, it says the second way geographers describe location of a place is by site, which is the physical character of a place. You got human, you've got physical characteristics. These are all different things you're going to see when you're studying place, or when you're looking at the characteristics that describe the site. And then again, there's this map of Lower Manhattan on page 15 in your book, and it shows all the different things that people have been able to add on in an effort to change the place. Okay, super cool stuff. That and also, I'll go ahead and talk to you real quick about 2 other concepts while we're on that topic, and that is the concept of environmental determinism versus possibilism. Environmental determinism is when scientists and geographers say that the environment is going to determine who you're going to be as a group of people. People used to say that Africa was so backwards developed because they were located along the equator, and that countries like or European countries and the United States and Japan were all great and well-to-do because they were located along the northern mid-latitudes. This is not accepted anymore. Now, people believe that we're limited possibly by what the environment will do around us. We can't change it and make it completely do what we want it to do, but we do have the capacity to adapt to the environment and to even adapt the environment to some extent to meet our needs, which is what people have done with the site of New York City. Okay? That's the difference between environmental determinism and possibilism. Okay, I'm going to ask you about, I will ask you a site and situation commercial, or commercial, what am I thinking, question. I'm going to ask you a question about longitude lines and latitude lines. Know that latitude lines are all parallel to one another. Latitude lines never intersect. All longitude lines intersect at the poles. Also, if you took the prime meridian and ran it all the way from pole to pole and then kept going, would that line be the same? No. That line is going to be the international date line. Okay? If I get to if I go to 20 degrees east longitude and follow it from pole to pole and then keep going, is it going to stay 20 degrees east? No. So every meridian is a line that begins and ends at poles. Alright? They do not continue all the way around. Alright? So make sure that y'all understand that concept. I'm going to ask you a question about time zones. There's only one question that's going to appear in your test about time zones, and it's pretty easy compared to what we were looking at in class. I'm going to ask you a question. Basically, you're going to need to understand fast time and slow time. I will ask you a question that says, if it is this time here, what time will it be in this location? And if you don't understand that if you go to the east, you're going fast time, and if you go to the west, you're going slow time, then you're not going to be able to fully understand the question. Okay? What do I mean by fast and slow time? I simply mean that when you go east, you're gaining an hour for every standard meridian you cross. When you go west, you're losing an hour for every standard meridian you cross. Alright, if you understand that, you're just fine. Let me know if you need the video. It is on YouTube. I can tell you how to get it on Edmodo if you need that video, or I can put it in the Dropbox for you. I probably will do that anyway. Greenwich Mean Time is the prime meridian. The prime meridian is 0 degrees longitude. The international date line is 180 degrees longitude. They're both longitude lines. There is no east and west value to those. There's a question on here about the U.S. Land Ordinance of 1785. I didn't even talk with you about the U.S. Land Ordinance of 1785, but I do want you to know that what it did was it organized the country into a system of townships, ranges, and sections. That is directly a test question. Okay? The U.S. Land Ordinance of 1785 divided the country into a system of townships, ranges, and sections. Look on page. I'm going to ask you about the about vernacular regions. And we discussed the American South, didn't we? We discussed the American South as a vernacular region, which is the same as a perceptual region. It is something that exists because it is perceived to exist. You ever ask somebody where the South is? You're always going to get a different answer. For me, the South is, we've already talked about, wherever we can find sweet tea. Okay? Most people are going to consider basically from North Carolina to parts of Texas to be the American South. I don't. There's a fine line once you get starting to Virginia where you're going to go up and you're not going to be able to find sweet tea. That's to me where the South ends and the North begins, and all those people. Another group of people say that Florida is not considered in the definition of the South because there's a lot of northernness going on in Florida for it to be so far south. I'm right there with them. I've been to Florida before. I've been to Miami. I've been places where it was hard for me to find sweet tea. I'm telling you. I'm not saying that they don't drink sweet tea, but there is a lot of places there that are so northern. Why is this? Because you've got a bunch of retired people coming from New England states and from the American West Coast and places like this that come and retire into the Florida retirement homes. Or you've seen those Villages commercials where they're always trying to advertise, send your old people to us. They'll live a life of luxury and play golf every single day, and you have tea every afternoon and be taken care of and live in your retirement like a millionaire and not be self-conscious about being old and stuck up in a place called the Villages with a really cool Villages song that they play on the commercial. Anyway, arrangement is another term that I want you to know. In terms of talking about distribution and things like that, the arrangement I think there was a page number on here somewhere. I'm not going to try to find it though. The arrangement of something is the it says there's an arrangement across sometimes spatial distribution. It describes how the spatial how the space is distributed, how the space is laid out. That's what arrangement is. I'm going to ask you about a functional region as well. We talk about functional, formal, and vernacular regions. A functional region is like a newspaper, or is like a radio station. Once you go to a certain point, you're just not going to see it anymore. The region has worn out. If you're looking for the state newspaper, there's going to come a point probably where you start getting pretty close to Georgia, where you're not going to be able to find the state because you're going to be looking at Georgia newspapers to talk about things that people in Georgia care about. You know, look at the Aiken Standard. You're not going to see that in Columbia or Lexington because nobody cares in Columbia or Lexington about what goes on in Aiken. I'm going to ask you about concentration and density. Those things are towards the end of chapter 1. All right, look on around pages. No, what it says. Yeah, look on page 32. You're going to see all the stuff you need to know about density, distribution, concentration. All those things are words you need to know. A cultural hearth is a location of something like some kind of a geographic phenomenon or something. Look on page 36 for information about a hearth. But it describes the place of origin of a phenomenon. So if you look at the cultural hearths of civilization, you're looking at Mesopotamia, Egypt, places where civilization first emerged. We done talked about environmental determinism. We've already talked about we talked about possibilism. I asked you to know what a polder is. Your book on page 41 says a polder is land created by the Dutch by draining water from an area. Essentially, that's what I want you to know. It's the conversion of a piece of land created by draining water from an area. Globalization. There's another question on here that we didn't talk about, but I'm going to go ahead and give it to you. I'll probably just go ahead and count it correct for everyone on the test as well. Globalization of the economy. When you start talking about how everyone economically wants to be the same, they can't always be the same. And so what you see is some countries have it really good, and then other countries are really struggling. So globalization of the economy has heightened economic differences among places. Again, that's a direct answer to a direct question. Globalization of the economy has heightened economic differences among places. We've already talked about people being able to adjust the site characteristics to meet their needs. Okay, I'm going to ask you about the five themes of geography: place, location, region, human environment, interaction, and movement. There was a five themes of geography PowerPoint that we looked at, and you guys should have all access to that in the Dropbox, or if it's not on SchoolFusion, I can put it on Edmodo. It would probably be easier, and you guys can take a look at it if you need that. Just let me know. Location, place. It's a good way to remember this is the very end of this has Mr. Help. Mr. Help. Movement, region, human environment interaction, location, and place. Mr. Help. Okay, that should be really easy to remember for the five themes, and they kind of define themselves. I'm going to ask you about a cartogram, a type of map projection that shows that is really good for showing population. So you could use that. We're talking about distance decay. If you look on page 36, you're going to see a definition. Basically, I want you to understand what it is. Okay, large distance from one group to another. Intervening obstacles such as mountains, things like that, are going to contribute to the phenomenon known as distance decay. Things that shorten distance like airplanes, like cars, like trains, things like that. Those are elements of technology that shorten the space-time compression, right? That make it seem like huge amounts of distance really aren't that huge because we can get there a lot quicker these days. I'm going to ask you to identify a picture of a Peters projection map. I'm going to ask you. Got another map here that I'm going to ask you about that I didn't put on the test, so I need to go and do that. And let's see, I'm also going to ask you about a azimuthal map that shows Antarctica, for example. So be able to identify those. Which brings me, and I'm sorry my video is kind of going a little longer than one, but it's gonna be helpful in the end. Something I don't generally do is go over my short answer or my free response questions in the video. However, I'm gonna go over my free response question in the video because it's 9 o'clock at night and I have nothing that brings me more joy than helping my students do very well on tests instead of going to bed when I'm completely exhausted. So here we go. Free response question number 1. I'm going to ask you to talk to me about globalization and local diversity, or localization, as I put on the test. You're going to see that word used as either one, localization or local diversity. Globalization is simply the idea that everyone is the same because of the fact that it's so easy for us to communicate our ideas. It's so easy for us to travel back and forth. Because of modern technology, we have really shortened the playing field so that we're literally everybody's neighbor. It doesn't matter if a lady's husband is in Iraq, she can communicate with him via Skype or email or however she wants to do it, just like they're having a conversation immediately. I told y'all that guy, cousin Jaden, that lives up in Minnesota, and I talked to her on FaceTime. It doesn't even cost me anything. As long as I have internet access, I can FaceTime her from my iPhone. And so, because of the fact that we're all so close, you see globalization is going on. And this is kind of the idea that we're all really basically the same. The world is flat, if you will. On the other hand, localization is the idea that we need to somehow try to prevent everyone from being the same because we're losing cultural uniqueness. So how in the world are you going to do stuff like preserve Zoroastrianism or preserve Native American tribes that are losing their culture because of really I guess people have forced our culture onto them historically, but also a lot of times those people want to change. They want to be like everyone else because, let's face it, if you want to be a great professor one day, you're not going to be able to be a professor if you're reading books in a ancient, Native American language. There's not going to be massive amounts of publication like that. In English, there is. English is the largest second language that exists. It's the world lingua franca, if you will. Everybody speaks English, so you might want to learn that. Well, if you know English, what's the point in knowing your ancient language that doesn't have a written tradition? Let's see. B. Give one example of each one of these things. Well, I just kind of gave a few, actually. Globalization. Look at Amazon.com. You can buy stuff from all over the world. Look at the news, your Fox News, your CNN, your MSNBC. You can watch these news stations in countries that aren't even American. And you think that when people see this, they're not inspired to kind of mold themselves by that? I mean, come on, y'all. How many times have y'all seen those Sarah McLachlan commercials on CMT, and then next thing you know, you want to spend $30 a month to try to save animals? You know, it's globalization is that. It is the fact that people want to be what's in, and what's in is generally in with a lot of people. Okay, it's the spread of, I guess, pop culture, if you will, and other things. C. There are some, we talked about this one today in class. Geography is dead. The world is flat. How is it that some people want to spread ideas of everyone being the same? Let's all be the same, and let's upgrade and modernize and all these good things, while at the same time let's protect cultures. And we just kind of talked about it. In class, I mentioned today that the Cherokee Indians are starting to educate their young, basically, by having them do part of their day school in their native language and part of their day school in English, so they actually learn the best of both worlds. This might be the last hope in trying to establish a tradition of keeping their culture. So that's a good example of how to answer C. Okay, number 2. I wanted you to talk to me about dog's tails. We did a project on dog's tails. Y'all made a map. You've got the dog's tails PowerPoint that's available in the Dropbox, or I think I have this on Edmo as well, or per request I can put it there if you need me to. You've got date, orientation, grid, scale, title, author, index, legend, situation. Right? That's your dog's tails. When I ask you a free response question, I only want you to tell me what I asked for. Okay? And this is kind of something you gotta get used to, because when you're doing the actual AP test, it's all they want. They're looking on a rubric, and they're not going to care about any kind of fluff you put in there. They're going to check you off based on what you have that they asked for. I asked you what does dogtails stand for. What is dogtails and what does it stand for? Dogtails is a acronym for describing the features of a map. And then I do want you to tell me what each letter stands for. That's what I'm asking you for. B. What is important? Why is it important to know the date and author of a map? Well, simply put, if it's old, it's going to be old information. The maps they're already old the second that they get made, because things are always changing in geography. And so you need to know the date so you can understand how true the map actually is. If you're looking at a map of Europe set in the 1980s, it doesn't look like that anymore. Hate to break it to you. Your map is old and you're going to miss countries. At the same time, author is very important, because there are some people out there that want to trick you. There are some people out there that's going to lie on their maps. There are some people out there that want you to look at their map but not see what everyone else is seeing. Look, for example, at American politics. A Republican map might look very different from a Democrat map, because they're trying to show you something and persuade you, just like anyone who writes a book. So author is very, very important when you're trying to find certain information. Finally, I wanted you to tell me the differences between site and situation. We kind of already talked about that. Site describes the place characteristics. Situation describes where something is based on other things. Number 3, the 5 themes of geography make up the essence of everything in geography. What are the 5 themes of geography? Mr. Help. Once again, this is all based on a PowerPoint we've done at the very beginning. You've got Mr. Help. In other words, so some of y'all don't feel like rewinding, you've got location, place, human environment interaction, movement, region. Those are the 5 themes of geography. If I'm asking you to give an example of the movement of goods, ideas, and people, you're going to come up here in movement. You're going to talk to me about how trucks, trains, and planes make it easier for people to get from place to place. Tell me about online shopping. Tell me about the transportation of goods from place to place quickly. Information, emails, cell phones, Facebook, Twitter, any of those things are going to be examples of the movement of information and ideas as well. Kind of the same concept. So there we go, a very easy question. I wanted you to describe one way Americans in the South have adapted to the environment of southeastern U.S. This is a human environment interaction question. We talked about hurricanes. That's probably the one that I would use. We talked a lot about hurricanes. People just know if you're going to live in the southeastern coast, you're going to have hurricanes. That's just a fact of life. You know that during Hurricane Isaac, they didn't even evacuate because they knew it was going to be a Cat 1 storm, and the standard, some of the buildings there, most of the buildings are automatically, they're just made to be able to sustain winds. The glass doesn't shatter or break. They're able to sustain winds up to a Category 3 storm. So, yeah, that's human environment interaction. You've also got your resorts and tourist attractions that are hurricane proof, if you will. Okay, leads us to number 4, and then we are out of here done. In 35, I think 35 minutes is pretty, or 36, 37 minutes is pretty good for an AI test. That's what I think. Maps have distortion. However, in today's time, we are very complex ways of devising maps using modern tools. So, name 3 map projections based on your map assignment and give a description of each. Simply put, you've got 10 or so you can choose from. I'm only asking you to memorize 3 of them and tell me all about it. Right? B, what is a GIS? What is GIS? And how does it work to make your maps more accurate? There's a section on GIS and GPS on page 12. GIS, Geographic Information System. They show a little picture on figure 1.7 of how it works. You basically take different types of data about a certain area and region and then compile them all together to make a map. I gave you all the example of FedEx trying to find a optimal location for their headquarters. They want somewhere where it doesn't snow. They want somewhere where it doesn't, where it might not rain all that much. They want somewhere that's a right to work state, so they don't have workers that are going to strike every chance they get. They want to find where taxes are low, so they have to pay the government all their wages. They want to find where they have a labor force. They're going to combine all that data together to know where the optimal location is, and then narrow it down from there. What is GPS, and how does it work to show location? Simply put, you've got satellites everywhere, up in the sky. When I say satellites everywhere, I think there are specifically 24 of them. I'm not going to ask you to tell me exactly how many, but I'm pretty sure that there are 24 satellites that it sends a signal that reflects back, and it can actually tell you and pinpoint exactly where you are in the world. It helps you to know where you're going. It helps you to be able to use absolute location to be able to get exactly where you're going without having to struggle with using maps. Then you might take a wrong turn and things like that. GPS, I mean, everyone experiences that. At some point, you guys have seen a GPS and how it works. It's pretty cool. The other day, I took a wrong turn on the bus coming home from Chapin, and if I wouldn't have had my iPhone that I just got, I probably it would have been a lot more annoying and hard for me to get back to the interstate, and so especially because I was well on my way to going way out there. So there we go. That's my test, human geography in a nutshell. I hope that was very helpful for you. Any questions you have, feel free to ask me on by messaging me on Facebook or Edmodo. And again, it is what it is. The test is going to be pretty simple if you know everything I just talked about, because I was looking at the test. I hope you guys have a good night and happy studying.